and welcome to this episode of Cara's Fast Natural English podcast. This is episode number 10, and today's episode is special because it's not going to be the usual short episode because it's an interview. I'm very pleased to welcome a fellow online English teacher, Leandra, from English with Leandra. Leandra helps English learners interact with natives in casual, informal conversations. And like me, she has spent some time living abroad in France. And this is where the inspiration for her teaching focus came from. So even though she had a high level of French, there were still some barriers she encountered. And today we're going to be sharing and comparing those experiences and talking about how you, as an English learner, can learn from our mistakes. So, Leandra, hello.
Hi, Cara.
So can you
Thanks for having me here.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm really glad to have my very first guest. It's really cool. So can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself to begin with?
Okay, well, as you said, I'm Leandra, and I'm from Barbados, which is a small island in the Caribbean. It's a tourist destination, so we usually have a lot of tourists visiting for the beaches and the sunshine. I'm also an online teacher, and I focus, as you would have mentioned before, on casual, informal conversations and helping non-natives to improve in this regard. I'm also a language lover, so I love learning languages. I've learned French and Spanish, even though my Spanish isn't, up to par, but I love learning new languages. And yeah, that's a little, that's me in a nutshell.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you for that nutshell. I can identify with Spanish because in theory I speak Spanish, but I'm kind of ashamed of my Spanish level. So let's stick to talking about France and French. So a couple of years ago now, if I'm right with my timing, you moved to Martinique, which is part of France, even though it's in the Caribbean. So can you talk to us a bit about your experience of moving there?
Right. So it was in October 2013 that I had the opportunity to move to Martinique. And for us, we had this opportunity at the end of university. So after the 3 years, you have this program that you can apply to, and you can see if you can live either in mainland France or in one of the French territories. And I chose Martinique. For me, it was a win-win situation in terms of I got the opportunity to improve my French by immersion. So as you would know, when you learn French at school, that's only part of the puzzle. You have to immerse yourself in order to improve in the language. And then I also got the opportunity to, get some teaching practice. And I always wanted to be a teacher. So for me, it was a win-win situation to live in a new country, improve my French, get some teaching practice, and I'm getting paid to do this. So for me, from Martinique, I chose Martinique as opposed to France because, I like warm weather, first of all. I really can't stand, the cold. Like, for example, even when I was at university, we would have the, AC. Sometimes it would be at 23 degrees Celsius, and I would be freezing.
Right.
With the coat on, I'm drinking a coffee, and I'm still freezing. So France was definitely not an option for me. And then also I like, Caribbean culture. I like the Martinican culture for me was a mix of, you had metropolitan France, and then you had Creole, Caribbean, culture. And there was this fusion of the two cultures, and I really love that.
Wow, that sounds really interesting. Yeah, I think I told you I've never been to Martinique or Guadeloupe, even though for people who don't know, so even though these places are islands in the Caribbean, they are actually considered part of France and part of the EU. So for me, on an EU passport, I could go there. In fact, I could even go and live there if I really wanted. And for some people in mainland France, or France métropolitaine, as they call it in France, it's their dream to go and live on one of these islands like Guadeloupe or La Réunion, which is in the Indian Ocean, and leave cold France behind. Although it's I can tell where I am in France today, it's very hot, so
right.
Yeah, it's not cold all the time. So an important part of what you teach your learners in English is about fitting in with native speakers. So how to immerse yourself in the culture and language so that you don't stand out as a foreigner.
Right.
So how did you do that when you went to Martinique? How did you fit in with French speakers?
Well, the first time I went, I didn't fit in at all. The first time was in 2011. So
Uh-huh.
I went for like 1 month. It was just, for practice. It was
Wow.
after my first year at university. So just a way for me to, practice, get a little vacation all in one. I had a difficult time following conversations. I couldn't express myself much at all. It was an extremely lonely experience for me. So even though like I was always surrounded by people, I felt, so alone and lonely. The
Mm,
next time I went, which was for my internship,
mm,
everything changed. So I tried to do things before that would enable me to fit in better. So I used to watch TV series. There's Pékin Express. I don't know if you've heard of Pékin
oh,
Express.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I
It's
spent like hours watching that each day because the reason I watched that was because it was unscripted and there's real, you know, those real time, real unscripted speech. And I think
yeah.
that's important to improve conversational English. It wasn't these scripted, TV series that you usually
Mm,
have. And that definitely helped me a lot in terms of learning how to, have these conversation fillers, like how to respond to certain things spontaneously and more naturally. Also, I think a big part of the change was my mindset.
mm,
So the first time I went, I had this mindset of, well, this is not the way I'm accustomed doing it. And okay, this is really weird. Why do I need to do it this
yeah.
way? But the second time I, adjusted the way I thought about the situation. And you have the saying, when in Rome, you do as the Romans do. So
Mm.
I changed my mindset. I was more open-minded this time. And I did the things that were culturally expected of me. And I think that helped really that helped greatly in helping me in terms of fitting in with the native French speakers there.
Okay, that's really interesting. I have done things quite in a quite similar way to you because well, it's many years ago now. In 2005, I went to France for a month and I went to Montpellier in the south, where it is hot like all the time. Even in winter, it's okay. And I lived with a family, and yeah, that was really good for helping me to fit in because you get to experience that real kind of day to day life. But it's true that yeah, I did struggle with kind of joining in with the talks around the dinner table, and
Right,
it's not easy. And at that point, I'd had a break in my studies, so I was kind of refreshing my French.
right.
So yeah, I can totally understand. I found myself kind of more observing, and just
Yeah, yeah,
I think you can relate to that, where you kind of
yes,
take the step back and watch what other people are doing. I think that can help you.
it
Um,
does. Yeah,
but obviously, we can't all go abroad for a month to test, what we're supposed to do. Before we go there, some things we just have to discover. When we're there. So, coming back more to the language now, what were some differences between the French you learned at university and the French you discovered on these two experiences in Martinique?
okay, so the French I learned at university unfortunately didn't help me to fit in much at all.
Mm,
So, I mean, like, recently I did an interview with someone and I was telling her I could write these literature essays. I
mm.
mean, we're studying normal French literature books, these thick, I'm writing these essays. Every week we're having this, some sort of speech or presentation on
Mm.
some complex topic. And even though we had conversation classes as part of our curriculum, I don't know, it wasn't really like a conversation between two people. It was
Mm.
more in terms of helping us to develop our speaking skills. So,
Yeah.
for example, we would have like a topic and we would react to it and say what we thought about it. But it wasn't a situation where we were, interacting with each other like a real conversation
Yeah.
would happen, like a dialogue. It was more of a monologue.
Okay. Yeah, I think I know what you
Yeah.
mean from having the same kind of conversation classes at uni. Yeah.
Right. And then another thing I noticed in terms of the differences was that, okay, well, obviously, spoken French, it was, really quick. So it wasn't like the audio recordings that we were accustomed to.
Mm.
And then certain grammatical rules that were so important and so, like, I mean, my teacher, she used to stress this so much. You have the negative, the ne and pas.
Yeah.
I remember my first time, like, communicating with someone. He was a Martinican, and he came to Barbados, and we were having a conversation after, this was before university, this was at college, well, community college. So we were having a conversation, and he just eliminated the ne. And I was like, where did the ne go? How can you take it? How can you take the ne out of the sentence? Like, this is something that was stressed in school, and just to see it disappear in spoken language, I thought that was really cool. And then in terms of even like contractions, so in terms of if someone said you didn't hear, tu n'as pas entendu, all of a sudden, t'as pas entendu, like they just take out the ne, the two, and the a just become, one word. And like, where did all the other words go? So I think the contractions was a huge difference. And when people are speaking quickly, you hear the difference in terms of what you learn and then what you hear in real everyday conversation. So like I was saying, we didn't really learn how to make small talk or have these casual conversations. And I remember for me, like sometimes when I was over there in Martinique, someone would say something and it would be something like good news and exciting. And I would just say, okay, in French and like, smile to show that I'm happy for them. But I didn't know like how to respond, naturally.
Yeah.
Or like if somebody, said something that was bad news, I would just show like a, kind of a sad face with a
sad
frown.
face, yeah.
Because I didn't, besides okay, yes and no, I didn't know like the other, little expressions that I could use. So it was really awkward not knowing, how to respond naturally and spontaneously.
Yeah, I can totally understand. And I see that with French people, you'll talk to them in English and they just say, yes, 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 yes. And
Right.
it's like if they just had a few expressions, because really we do use the same expressions all the time in conversation. We don't reinvent the wheel, as we say, every single day. You can't and you don't need to. So once you've learned, a few kind of set expressions, you can use them.
Yeah.
Exactly. So have you got any examples of particularly awkward moments that you encountered?
I think every person who's lived in a foreign country has definitely got awkward moments. So for me, one that stands out is okay. This was the last time I was in Martinique. So I had recently met a girl and her name was Elodie. So she was taking me, around the neighborhood and stuff, and she stopped at her cousin's house. I mean, there were some other family members there. I remember feeling really uncomfortable because, the guy was drinking. It was obvious he was a little bit tipsy. You could see it in his eyes. And he was just like staring at me. He wouldn't take his eyes off of me. So I felt a bit uncomfortable. So then he asked me what my name was. Now, remember, all of this is in French. And I told him, Leandra, okay. So he responded, jolie. And jolie means, something is pretty or nice in English. Now, I thought the guy was complimenting me and telling me that I'm pretty, right? So I blushed, feeling all awkward and uncomfortable. And I was like, well, thank you, merci. And he was like, comment? Huh? I don't understand. So I said, thank you again. And then he was like, I said, my name is Jolie. So apparently in Martinique, there's a Jolie with a Joly. And that was his last name. So I was there feeling so embarrassed because here I am thinking the guy is telling me that I'm pretty. And I'm there like, okay, thank you. And he was actually telling me his name. And after that, I just pretended that, I didn't understand anything in French. I slowed down my speech, considerably. And then when he asked me again, like, what was the misunderstanding. I mean, I slowed down everything. I was like, je ne comprends pas. I just slowed it down, and I'm just hoping that I think he was too tipsy to recognize my gap, but it was so embarrassing for me at that time.
Right, yeah, I think maybe the fact that he was drunk means you can get away with it. He probably won't remember. Well,
Yeah, exactly.
you've just told everyone about it on here, but that's okay. Okay. When you were abroad, did you find that linguistic differences or misunderstandings like the one you just described were the only barrier, or were there some cultural differences that stopped you from fitting in?
Right. Cultural differences are really important, and that's one of the things I like to stress to, students, that you have to have an understanding of the culture of the country, and you have to respect it as well. And culture and language, they're closely linked. So oftentimes that is reflected sometimes in your body language and your facial expressions. So I'm just thinking of this experience I had when I was in Martinique the first time, when I didn't really know much about the culture. So before going to Martinique that first time, we had like these ESL students here in Barbados. And sometimes they would, faire la bise and do the kiss thing. And I thought it was just something, they do here and there. I didn't realize how important it was in the culture. So here I am now, the first time in Martinique, and I'm staying by my friend Karin's family. So I remember one day we were going, to play some basketball, something like that. And I came downstairs, everyone was there waiting. So I just said hi with a big wave to everyone. Okay, I mean, with a smile on my face, I'm just happy to see everyone. And so, I mean, that's what I would do if I'm in a group of people or whatever. So then I realized Carrie's granddad was acting a bit, funny. Like he seemed a bit upset, and I didn't know what was going on. So then she explained to me afterwards that he was upset that I didn't feel at ease with him. And I'm like thinking, I saw you yesterday. I kissed you yesterday. And that kiss should last you, the whole week, because I don't have to kiss you again today, do I? So for me, I didn't know. I'm not accustomed, kissing people. That's not part of my culture. So I'm thinking if I do it, I just need to do it like once, and it lasts.
Yeah.
It's like it has like a week expiry date or something. So I didn't know I had to kiss him again when I saw him. So, that really opened my eye to the culture. And then the second time around now, I was like a kissing boss. So nobody had to tell me, to feel at ease. I was, taking the initiative and doing it. And that made my integration into the Martinican life much easier and much smoother, having a better understanding of the culture.
Okay, yeah, it's the same in metropolitan France. It is important to kiss, but it's true that there are some French people who don't like doing it, and it's important to remember it's not really a kiss. It's basically you touch the other person's cheek and you make a kissing noise. So
right,
it is a weird gesture, I think.
Right.
And I think after a while, like with some people, you can kind of like make your own rules. If you don't want to kiss all the time, you can kind of decide. But it's true that, yeah, when you first meet someone, and especially if you're young, you might meet someone and they might say, oh, hello, my name is whatever. And then you kiss them and then you like never see them again, but you have to do it. It's just one of those rituals that's important.
But I think also there's so many unwritten rules surrounding la bise, because, okay, for some of my friends, like if I see them, we would, kiss. And then like, let's say the person is dropping me back home at night, I would kiss them before leaving. But for other people, I wouldn't do that. So it was like, and it was difficult for me because I was asking a friend of mine, how do I know? And she's like, there are no rules. Like you have to go based on the feeling you have with the person. And I guess it's kind of the same in English culture because we don't hug everybody.
No.
There's some people you feel, more of an attachment to. There are other people who are known for hugging, especially with those bear hugs. Some people are more affectionate. So I think, it has to go on the feeling, and that's really challenging when you're already trying to fit into the language and the culture, and you have to now figure out these rules on your own.
Yeah, yeah, it is difficult, but I think it is more complicated in English speaking countries, whereas in France there are maybe more rules, I think.
Right.
Even though there's exceptions, you can't, yeah,
Right.
la bise is kind of expected. Handshakes as
Right.
well, like at work, are kind of more expected. But yeah, a lot of it is unwritten, or what you think is the right rule might be
Right. Exactly.
slightly different, according to the
Person.
or the play, or even like here, like I've got some friends now. They are French, but they're living in Lausanne in Switzerland, which is about an hour and a half from here.
Okay.
And in Lausanne, you have to give 3 kisses. Normally here it's only 2. In some places it's 4.
Oh, right.
I mean, I don't like having to do it anyway, but and then I have to do 3. What?
Right.
It's so annoying. But anyway, that's part of the culture, so
Right.
you
Exactly.
you just do it. Okay, so let's talk a bit now about non-native English speakers. So what kinds of problems have you seen that they face when they go abroad?
So I recently did, 2 interviews
Mm.
with 2 ladies from France. One worked in England as a language assistant. The
Mm-hmm.
other had an internship in Miami.
Oh.
And one common thing that they mentioned was, you know, the importance of, mastering small talk in English.
Mm.
Because it was a struggle for them to be natural and spontaneous, even though they could, talk about complex subjects and they had a pretty advanced level of English.
Yeah.
And it was still a challenge for them. And some people are unaware of just how important small talk is because it's something you encounter every day.
Yeah.
Basically, if you're going, unless you're staying in your house and not going anywhere, you're going to, encounter small talk when you run into people, you meet people, you go to the supermarket, something, you go out somewhere, you're going to meet people. And, some people don't realize how important it is until they arrive and they're basically thrown into the deep end, so to speak, and then they struggle to wrap their heads around small talk and casual conversations. Another issue that I see is that people have difficulty responding. So I know we talked about
Mm.
this already. And well, I had the same issue in French, but they don't have any expressions to know how to respond naturally. So then the conversation kind of gets awkward because
Yeah.
then the native English speaker doesn't know, okay, should I continue? What should I
Yeah.
say next? Because it's really awkward because the person is not, you have these little words you can add in to make the conversation flow, and they don't really do that. So the
Mm.
conversation starts to get a bit, awkward.
Yeah, totally. Well, just like even today, we didn't jump straight into the podcast interview. We
Right,
had a
exactly.
little chat about, how our days are going, what the weather's like, where we are,
Exactly.
It would be strange to not do that.
Just go straight to the questions.
Yeah, yeah,
Question
it's
number
just,
one.
yeah, boom. No, how are you? No, nothing. Just, get straight
Question
in
number
there.
one, Leandra.
Yeah. Come on, hurry up. Okay, so that brings me to my next question, I guess, which is, could you tell us why it's so important for non-native speakers to fit in when they travel abroad, or when they move abroad?
Right. So when I talk about fitting in, it's basically being integrated into your environment, not standing out, not sticking out like a sore thumb. You don't want to be seen as, the totally different person.
Hmm.
You want to feel like you belong and you feel accepted. Obviously, even in native English speaking countries among native speakers, people stand out because of their personality. Some people have certain quirks that make them stand
Hmm.
out more than others. But in general, you want to fit in when you're, in a foreign country. And sometimes even persons with a high level, who may be teachers, non-native English speaking teachers of
Hmm.
English, they might have difficulty fitting in as well because even though they may be able to teach, the grammar and the vocabulary,
Hmm.
there are other subtle things and nuances that aren't taught in classes.
Hmm.
I did a post on that recently when I was talking about, how to do things more politely in terms of giving suggestions and feedback. Like there've been, I remember particularly a Martinican when he was saying, I did something and his response was like, it was okay, but it was not a good job, right? And I'm thinking, okay, I could have worded that, it could have been worded much better. And he went on to, list all of the things I did wrong.
Right.
And it was kind of said in an aggressive tone. And I tried not to take offense because one, I know he's not native. And two, I know he's a really kind person. So he didn't mean, it wasn't a bad, he didn't have bad intentions. He was
No.
well intentioned. But, so I was kind of forgiving of it. But for people who are not accustomed dealing with non-native speakers or language teachers, they're going to get offended. And then, that's going to affect the way you fit in with people. Some of the downsides of not fitting in, you have the emotional issues. Really and truly, it's really an emotional issue and a struggle you deal with because you're surrounded by people, people are around you, but you still feel alone because, you don't fit in. It's difficult to make friends.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And then you're already struggling with coping with the new language. And as we have mentioned, it's different from the language you learn at school. So you're dealing with the everyday language, you're dealing with this new culture. And if you're there for like a new job or school, you have to deal with admin and paperwork and all that other stuff.
Oh, yeah, there's so much.
And then you're struggling emotionally to fit in. And, feeling misunderstood and like, kind of cast aside that you're an outcast is never good. So this is why I stress, you want to fit in when you're living in a native English speaking country because that way you can socialize and you can interact with native English speakers more easily. It's easier for you to make friends and you're also more confident as well when you're speaking with them and when you're going out and meeting new people, you have more confidence.
Okay, great. Yeah, I can totally understand and relate to that experience. It's actually my 9th year in France this week.
Wow.
It was like Tuesday or something was the anniversary of when I
That's
came
nice,
over.
so nice.
Yeah, I tried to think. Oh, okay, yeah, that has been 9 years now. That's something.
So you should be kind of fully integrated by now.
Fully integrated, yes, more or less. And I had a nice compliment recently from a colleague who I worked with in the first couple of years here, and he said that when I speak French now, you can't really tell that I'm British, and that's important for me because it just annoys me when people. Well, it shouldn't annoy me, but when people sort of ask me where I'm from and things like this, because it's not really exciting. Maybe it was in the first couple of years, but now I feel like. Yeah, I feel so integrated where I am that I don't even want to kind of discuss that I'm not French, but maybe I'm just weird, but...
No, that's totally normal.
Okay, all right, I'm normal. I feel better now. Okay, and I know you have something really exciting coming up that you've been working hard on, which is your Socialize in English Like a Pro. Sounds really good. Just socialize in English like a pro. I love that name. Can you tell us about what that actually does for English learners who have moved abroad or who often speak to native speakers in their work?
Right. So Socialize Like a Pro in English is my new online course. And we would have mentioned certain issues before. Issues like, not knowing how to make small talk and being natural in casual conversations. And this led me to create this new course, which is currently open for enrollment. The course covers 7 important conversation strategies that usually come up in casual, informal conversations. So if you're having a casual, informal conversation, these are things that usually come up repeatedly. So if you can master these 7 strategies, you'll be able to be more natural and spontaneous in conversations, and you'll have an easier time socializing and fitting in. There's that word again, fitting in with native English speakers. So for me, what I did is to learn these, strategies, natural conversation strategies, I had to watch so many TV series. And then I had this book like next to me. So I'd be watching the series, pause, write quickly, go on word reference, look it up, okay, then put back the TV on, Okay, go again, pause. And I mean, that takes so much time. It was
Yeah.
good, for listening practice and to learn these new expressions, but it took me so long to learn these
Yeah,
expressions.
I can understand. I've found TV helpful, but some French TV programs are just rubbish as well. So I mean,
Yeah.
I feel for you.
Yeah, so I had to, write all these expressions down and I had to look them up in the dictionary,
Mm,
and it was so much work.
yeah.
So, I wanted to create this course to as a shortcut. You don't need to watch all these series to learn these 7 important strategies. Of course, there are other conversation strategies, but I think that these are the ones that come up repetitively. They're always in almost every single conversation. You have
Mm,
to use them. So I think if you can master these, you can have much better conversations. To me, the course will completely change the way non-natives interact with native English speakers in
mm.
casual conversations. So, for example, I did a small version of the course with Dominique, who's from Paris. She's currently living in California. And even though she has a high level of French, there's something I noticed about her after we did the course. So I taught her certain conversation fillers and how to respond more naturally. And in our conversations afterwards, she would be like, "Oh my goodness, look, you just use a natural conversation filler." So it made her more aware of these. So now, even when she's listening to conversations
Mm.
in the US, she's listening out for these things and she's more aware of them. And I find, that has shown me the power of the course, that it can change the way you think about interaction and socializing with native English speakers. Now, it's
Mm.
perfect for those who are already living abroad or those who interact regularly with native English speakers. So, for example, if you have a colleague or a family member that's a native English speaker, it'd be perfect for you. Obviously, it calls for a certain level of English because
Mm.
it's not for any and everyone. It's those who have an already intermediate to advanced level of English. So you can already communicate. You don't have any problem really communicating, but you want to take your conversation skills to the next level. So I had the struggle of not knowing what to say next, as I mentioned before, how to keep conversations going. And this course helps you to avoid, that awkward silence. Nobody likes awkward silence, especially when you don't know, what to say next. There are thousands of things you can say, but you don't know what to say next. And, I kind of teach the strategies you can use to keep conversations going. That's a part of the course. So the focus is on being more natural. This is what the focus of the course is. So when you master these 7 important conversation strategies, you're more natural, and then that has a positive effect on your life because you're able to fit in better with native English speakers.
Wow, that all sounds really good. But I think it's really interesting that you used it with somebody who is already living abroad, but
Right.
hadn't noticed what was actually happening in casual conversation. And really, learning a language is learning about noticing things. But
Right.
you need someone to show you, because when you have so much input, because every day it's 100% in your second language, you can't always sort the different things you're hearing out. You
Exactly.
can't
Yeah.
always notice. You need somebody to be able to tell you,
To point it
look.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, well that sounds fantastic. So we'll finish up now, and we're going to put all the details about Leandra's course in the show notes. So if you're on SoundCloud, I will put some links on there, and then there'll also be some links on my blog, because I always put these on my blog every week. And if you're on iTunes or Stitcher, you will also see in the show notes as well. So you won't miss anything, don't worry. Thank you very much to Leandra for coming and being on the podcast and sharing
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome, sharing your experiences, especially your embarrassing experiences of living abroad. I think that's everyone can relate to that, definitely. And we should maybe mention that in the course there will be an interview with me. So,
Oh, yes.
that's for me, that's the really added value part of your course is having me in there.
Yeah, so Kara will. So while I'm teaching you the strategies you can use, the things you can say, Kara's also going to point out things that you can listen for and how to improve your listening skills, because we're both dealing with casual conversation. So, listening is just as important as speaking, and that's where Kara comes in. So I'm really looking forward to that bonus training we're going to have for you all.
Yeah, that should be really good. And I'm really happy to present you to my audience because, yes, I teach people about understanding and listening to fast casual conversation, which is one problem. And then you're helping with, well, I've understood, but what do I say next? How do I keep this conversation going? And how do I fit in ultimately, which is the ultimate goal. So great. Thanks again for taking the time to be here, and we'll speak again soon, I'm sure. All right.
Okay. Thanks for having me. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. Thanks for listening, everyone. See you soon.